All right, Meg, welcome. It's Deep Cuts Week 5. You crushed it yesterday. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How are you feeling?
I feel great.
Yeah.
I really do. Yesterday, I was exhausted after I spoke.
Right.
But I'm feeling really good today. Excited about it.
Let's just spend a minute there.
Mm-hmm.
Preaching, communicating, getting in the Word, studying. It's an emotional, spiritual investment, and thus you're tired after.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
How does that play out for you?
Well,
Because I think a lot of people joined with us today think, oh, this is what they do. They just talk,
right,
and they're fine on Monday. But it takes a lot out of us.
It does. And I think, we're spirit, soul, body, right? So our spirit can be running 1,000 miles an hour, and our body's like, hang on. Me too. I'm coming. And so I think that you can't discount the beautiful weight of responsibility, not in an unhealthy way, which I can easily cross over into for sure. But in that, I want to steward this well, right? So I think that we have to guard that internal pressure. But I also think that, like I said, we have this body. I was cracking up yesterday, got off the stage, and my smartwatch was like, you just ran a 70-minute marathon. I was like, nope, I didn't.
No way.
Yeah. It was wild. I'm like, man, I should just preach every week. I don't need to exercise. It was just a workout. So I think you can't discount the fact that, the spirit moves, but he has to move upon our flesh, right? And so there's that joining of it with the Lord. So yeah, I think there's a really big part of it that requires some stewardship on our part, that requires the need to wind down, take care of our nervous system.
So good.
I've learned a lot about even my nervous system right before I go on stage. Just public speaking, it's like one of the top fears, right?
Sure.
And so just kind of telling my nervous system, like, you're not being chased by a bear. You are okay right now.
That's
everything's
right.
great. Your Father's with you. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't discount the fact that nerves are real. Your body is real. It's going to talk to you through those things too.
Having done Ultra Prepare, set your dependence upon your gifting aside and trust that the anointing will make the difference and really change people's hearts, because we can't change people's hearts in and of ourselves.
No.
Well, I'm pumped you're here today.
Thanks.
I did want to start here today. What is your favorite movie? You kind of kicked off with that yesterday, and I thought, I didn't get to hear your favorite movie.
Well, I think that's a loaded question, right? I think you can have a favorite movie in every genre.
Let's go.
Especially as like my background in theater. I'm like, whoa, my favorite musical is this. But my favorite movie of all time.
Okay.
It's called While You Were Sleeping. It's with Sandra Bullock. It is not a Christmas movie. I will say that. It is a movie based around Christmas time. But it's not a Christmas movie. It's a very simple romantic comedy, but it's not cheesy. The character development in all of it is just fantastic.
While you were sleeping.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I love it.
So if you're dating or engaged, add that to your list today.
100%. Yes, there you go.
I loved your message yesterday. You were talking about really the need to let go of control. And I think a second part, which was grieving disappointment.
Yeah.
Let's get under the hood of letting go of control.
Okay.
I think it starts with a fear motivation. I think everything in life really comes down to a motivation of fear or love.
Yes.
We're being driven from fear or from love. How has fear shaped your drive to want to control circumstances?
That's another loaded question.
Yeah.
I think in my life, my tendency, I know you and I are wired quite similarly. We have that perfectionist bent in us, right? And that, I've learned that the motivation between passion and drive and fear lives so close in my heart that I have to constantly check my motivations with the Lord. Like, am I just being driven by passion, by dream, by what you have in me right now?
Yep.
Or am I being driven by fear of what if I don't? Because I think we have to ask ourselves that question in that moment, like, is it, what if I do this? What if it turns out great, right? Or what if I don't? And then that leads to ultra planning, clamping down on control, and really trying to micromanage what is outside of our control. Chris and I, my husband and I, talk a lot about controlling what you can control and letting go of what we can't.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, especially as Christians, we try to just clamp down on what we can't control. And there's just that lack of trust in the love of God when we're trying to control things outside of our control. And I'm not coming to you as an expert that does this perfectly. I'm coming to you as a person that has messed this up enough to have some street cred to say it doesn't work when we're trying to grasp for control and things outside of our control. There's a beauty and a boundary that we have with the Lord when he's like, I've got this. I want you to steward what's in front of you well. There's much to be said about discipline and turning into desire and obedience and all of that. But at the end of the day, knowing, okay, what am I being driven by? Like you said, love or fear. And if I'm resting in the love of a father, right, then I can do whatever I need to do. And it's not from a place of striving, even though, I mean, you're going to have moments that you're like, holy cow, I'm running hard, I'm striving too hard, I'm not abiding. I think it's constantly checking in with yourself and your motivations.
I love that. We don't have time to really get into the weeds of this, but I will say this. I think when we are motivated by fear, there's the drive to self-protect because life and people has proven that it and they are not safe, and thus we have to, number one, go at it alone, but then hedge ourselves against disappointment in the future, and we live a reactionary, self-protected life. At the end of the day, that leads to disappointment. I'd like to propose. What do you say about that?
Yeah, and I think it leads to bondage, too.
Oh, say more.
I think it leads...
That's good.
You know, Jesus came, he said, I've come to give you life and life to the full, right? When it doesn't feel like freedom, but it feels like a weight, it feels like you said, I'm going to pull back from people because you don't feel safe from me. And I think there's boundaries for sure. Like this is not getting a boundary conversation, but this is when boundary becomes I protect and isolate, right? Because I don't want to put myself out there because of a hurt, motivation. Of a wound, right?
Wow.
I'm not resting and feeling safe in the love of God, that when I put myself out there, it's a risk. You're going to get hurt, but it didn't kill me. Like my Father is for me. I would rather be free than be bound. So I'm going to keep putting myself out there in really safe ways to exercise my freedom, one, and to get confident in the areas that I have been bruised really bad, like to just kind of regain some footing. You know, there's times in my life that I've gotten really deeply either hurt or just walked through something traumatic, and it was like a baby step into a win was a huge win.
Yeah,
like
right.
It's taking back that tiny bit of ground. So I think asking yourself, like, what does that look like today?
Yeah.
Right? Is it saying, like, initiating that conversation? Is it getting out of bed? Is it putting on clothes that make you feel confident? Like, what is the baby step that you're like, I'm going to take this little bit of ground today, and that's going to be a win.
James Clear, the author of the book Atomic Habits, talks about getting 1% better every day. And that's sort of what I hear you saying in a way.
Yeah.
Let's go here. You mentioned this yesterday, that many people feel like they're holding the remains of plans that burned to the ground. Navigating disappointment well, I think, is one of the hallmark aspects of our Christian experience. What do we do with disappointment then? You had mentioned a moment ago, I'd rather be free than be bound. However, sometimes we unintentionally prefer the chains of bondage, not because they're comfortable, but because they're familiar.
They're safe.
And the safety of familiarity gives us a dysfunctional warm blanket by which to live. What do we do with navigating disappointment? I know this has been a huge part of your story, and Chris's story. I'd love to hear more.
There's a false sense of security that we can give ourselves when we have been hurt and we recoil and we play it safe, right? We think that I'm going to build this hedge around ourselves to protect, and it's a false sense of security. It's not real. You're making your life smaller and smaller and smaller instead of living into the healing that God has for you. So what that looks like when you do when you do get disappointed, because we are, right? We're not in heaven yet. And I think Christians, sometimes we can paint this thing like, no, we're blessed and highly favored and I'm not going to walk through anything. That's just not biblical. Like, yes, you are blessed and highly favored, but we're going to walk through some stuff. So how do we navigate it? I think we have to check in with our emotions. I think there's 3 things that we can do with our emotions. I was listening to this book by Jess Connolly, and she said we can either shove our emotions, we can obey our emotions, or we can process through our emotions. And that's the only healthy one, because when you shove or when you only obey what you're feeling, it's going to come out sideways. It's not going to come out in a healthy way. So I think navigating disappointments is learning how to process through those emotions, sometimes in real time, sometimes going, I can't do this right now. I'm going to do this here at this time in a healthy way with the Lord. And I don't want to say that from like a really high level. I want to give people like, what does that look like on a Tuesday morning, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
how am I processing through this disappointment? I think it's giving people the permission to be honest with God. So many times we feel like we have to like put on for our Father, or we just put distance between us and the Lord.
Now you're talking.
Until we feel
That's it, Meg.
okay enough to approach Him, right? But that's like living with our own set of grace. That's not receiving the grace that is ours to walk into. And so going, okay, Lord, I feel this way, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's a prayer walk, whether I know for me, I'm a big journaler.
Yeah.
I will sometimes write out feelings that I may not give myself permission to verbalize, or I don't even know.
Say that again, please.
Right?
That's powerful right there. Folks, lean in and listen to
Yeah,
this.
I may give myself permission to write things out that I don't often give myself permission to verbalize. There's times I've told my husband, I'm like, I don't even know how I feel about something until I start writing, because your emotions, your brain, depending the depth of disappointment or trauma or everything that you walk through, it can just feel chaotic. And so sometimes I got to bring it down a little bit, just start writing out and going, oh, that's how I feel. Okay, now we can get underneath that, Lord. Why do I feel that way? And sometimes it's enough to do it with, just with yourself and Jesus in a journal. Sometimes you need other people surrounding you to go, hey, I see you functioning from this place. What's going on? Sometimes that's a really trusted friend. Sometimes that's a pastor. Sometimes that's a therapist to help you unpack, where did that motivation come from? Let's get under that disappointment so you can heal and move forward, because disappointment is never the end of the story with the Lord. It's never the end. It's something, the word says that we walk through the valley, right? We don't live in the valley, but the only thing chasing after us, right? We often feel like I walk through disappointment and now I'm just all this stuff. Like I just have bad luck. We say all these negative, like condemning statements, right? Like I'm just this, I'm just that. No, you're going to walk through the valley. That's a truth, but you don't live in the valley. We don't camp out in the valley, because the only thing chasing after us, that same psalm says, is goodness and mercy. Like the Lord is with us in the valley if we'll walk through Him. And I think that we have to know is that in those darkest places, and I wish it wasn't this way, I wish that my biggest moments of intimacy with the Lord came from the heights, right? Came from like these big moments where I saw God doing this and that and the other thing. But the deepest intimacy that I have with the Father has been cultivated in the darkest places. It's been cultivated in those places that the parts of my heart that I wish I hadn't lived through.
Jeez.
But God's been faithful there.
Come on.
And that's what I have to go back to, is that He was faithful there. So He's going to be faithful again when another wave comes, when another disappointment comes. He's going to be faithful.
Wow. He's
going to redeem. I'm going to be stronger through it, because you don't gain strength without any kind of resistance. So what you grow up through, you gain a new muscle, a new confidence, and with the Lord, a new depth of that relationship. And you come out stronger on the other side. I heard it said one time that the emotional reservoir that you've dug in grief, so the same depth that you've had in grief, you now have this reservoir that can contain joy. And I think that some of the people that I've seen walk through the most difficult places, when they've healed well with the Lord, those are the people now that they experience life to the full, because they know what matters. They know they can get easily excited by these beautiful little things because they've cultivated this depth with the Lord. And it's a beautiful, beautiful redeeming thing.
That's a whole message right there. This is a whole podcast conversation that I think we might need to have. Okay, so then the question begs, embodied trust looks like what on Tuesday morning when you wake up? Here's why I ask that, because I think behind this folks, listen, if we're all being honest, when disappointment repeats and we don't deal with the disappointment, we make an internal narrative determination about the safety of the character of the Lord. Yeah. And we unintentionally, I've preached about this here, hold him at an arm's length. We put him on trial too. Two-part question. How do we relearn? How do we relearn the safety of the Lord? And then what does embodied trust look like on Monday or Tuesday morning?
You and I have
actually had no plans of going here today. Like, I literally just shut my iPad because we're going for it. I love it. Yeah.
What's interesting is I think you and I have had this conversation multiple times just as friends.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because we've both walked through hard things in our past.
Yeah.
And when the new hard thing comes, you go, no. I already walked through that hard thing.
I don't want anything to do with that.
Let's leave that in the past,
That's
right? I already walked through the thing, Lord, so now I'm ready to steward all the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to something that I said yesterday, is that the quickest thing that pain causes me to forget is that I'm loved. The quickest thing that pain causes all of us to forget is that
Why? Like drill down on this. Why? What is it about pain that is so insidious that it drives a new narrative and causes our hearts to insulate and go a different direction?
Because I think we know at the end of the day that we weren't created for this world. We were created for love of the Father, right? Yeah. We were created for heaven, for eternity. Like, we were created for Eden. And when we feel the pain, the evil, the loss, like it rails up against everything inside of us that goes, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. And it's not ultimately, right? It's not, but how do we walk through that?
Yeah.
How do we recultivate that? And I wish, Chris, I so wish I was like, well, you go read Proverbs 16 and then Psalm 23, and then you do 3 prayers and you circle around and then you sit and then like you're through it in Jesus' name. Amen. Like, I wish it looked like that, but it doesn't. There's no way out but through.
And we have to do it with him, because even those life hacks, listen, deep cuts, the nature of deep cuts is we want people to assimilate the teachings from Sunday. But I've said this to Chris, I've said this to all the people on the team here, we can't turn this or any activity, Christian activity, into a life hack, because in so doing, we are tempted to live by an independent spirit that lacks trust. For when he says, trust in, lean on me with your whole heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. We're like, I still got the weight on my back leg, because if I'm being honest, I don't fully trust you. Keep going. I'm fascinated by this. So encouraged by this.
I'm so glad. No, I really do. I think we can hedge our bets with the Lord a lot of times. You know, we're like, I think you're going to come through also. I got this in my back pocket just in case you don't. I don't like the direction that you're leading me.
Real talk today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the circumstance. Like, I don't want to say anything that feels trite to people that are walking through true pain. You know, I really don't, but I just know from walking through my own stuff that there's no way out but through. I think it looks like staying in it and staying with the Lord, you know, processing through it and processing through it with him. It means consistency. It means getting up. It means doing it wrong, and it means getting it up and leaning into him again. You know, it means a million different things, right? It means prayer walks with him. It means turning off a lot of the other noise and getting real with him. It means being obedient when the last thing you want to do is say yes and get up, right? But it also means being real enough to not push yourself in those moments, and to heal, to actually cultivate healing and not just pushing through. Because I think I think that there is this like pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative.
Yes, the gospel of upward mobility says go at it alone. American Christians were like, Jesus, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's Jesus and a little stats, Jesus and he's my sidekick, my buddy. Yeah. You know that whole bumper sticker from when we were growing up? Jesus is my co-pilot.
Right.
It's nonsense.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, right, I think you and I we're big advocates of owning what, like I said, control what you control, owning what you can own, like taking care of your health, taking care of all these other dimensions that can help you gain momentum to get healing. I think it's being a good, I don't like this, being a good steward of your pain.
Yeah, and when we're in pain, the last thing we're concerned about is how do I steward this really well?
I know. It's awful. It's awful. But what I know...
It is the call, though.
It's
the call to maturity.
Yeah, it's the call to maturity, and you can't circumvent it. So you might as well go through it well. Word, Meg. You know, I've been walking through just a couple health issues these last couple years, and I can't, every morning I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, my 50-year-old self is going to really thank me for walking through this well. You know, my 60-year-old self, she's going to love this girl for how she pushed through, what she learned, what she did, the disciplines, how she leaned into the Lord, but also what she learned in the process of healing. And I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't like this. I wish there was another way. And anytime you want to jump in it and cultivate another way, I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Every day I'm praying for this, and I'm believing you can do it, Lord. Sometimes God does something. Sometimes God does a healing in an instant. And I love when he does that. I love when he does that. It's my favorite.
For sure.
Other times, he's like, I'm going to lead you through, kind of like what I talked about yesterday, the long way home.
Yep.
But you have to remember that I'm doing that because I love you. I'm doing that because of I know what you don't. I can see what you can't. I know what you're going to learn in the valley is going to be produce fruit that you can't even measure yet once you're outside of the valley. And girl, you're going to get outside the valley. That's going to happen. But you need the character to carry what's coming next. And I'm going to teach it in this way that you don't want. And I need everybody to hear when I say those words, that costs me so much. I'm not saying this from a place that I don't have street cred. I do. I know what it's like to lay on the floor with Jesus and be like, I can't, I don't know how to do this anymore. You know, I've had moments in my bathroom floor with my Bible open and going, God, I don't know how to move forward from this. And that's being honest. And that's praying, and that's letting go. And that's asking him to walk with you because you know you can if he will just continue to walk with you, and he's never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. Therefore, I can do this. I don't feel like I can, but I know that I can. So you get up and you move forward and you keep going. But in that getting up and moving forward, you're never not processing, never holding an open hand to the Lord going, heal it. Like whatever you want to do, get underneath that.
I believe in breakthrough with my whole heart.
Yes.
And yet, sometimes, because my story was not breakthrough, it was walkthrough.
Gosh, yes, I know.
And enduring faith gives us answers to prayer. I've heard it said this way, with character. I want to land here today. Yeah. Psalm 68, verse 19 in the Amplified says, "Blessed be the Lord who bears our burdens and carries us," here it is, day by day.
Yeah.
Psalm 20 opens up and basically says, "May the Lord God of Jacob set you on high. May he answer you in the day of trouble." And I'm saying today, Scripture says, is the day of salvation. Yes. So Lord, I'm believing for provision, for grace today. And when tomorrow becomes today, I'm going to hold fast to your character. I'm going to learn of your steadfastness toward me. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Anything else today? Thank you. This, I didn't expect any of this today, but what a conversation. And I don't even think we're done, but we need to land the plane today.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
You know, just as you were talking there, Chris, it came to my mind just how when Jesus taught us how to pray in the Lord's Prayer, right? He didn't pray for his monthly bread. I kind of wish he would have. Like as a planner, I kind of wish he would have said, give us this, this day, our 5-year plan, right? But he was like, give us this day our daily bread. What does that mean? What's the daily bread? It's the sustenance that carries us through today. That doesn't negate God is a planner by nature, right? Like he plans things out, but sometimes it's his kindness to us that he doesn't let us know too much so we don't run ahead of him or lag behind him because we're afraid. Because if we saw our life written like a book, first day to the last. I guarantee there would be parts of our story that we would say, I don't like that. I'm going to run from that. I'm going to make decisions that don't align with that. So I'm going to just try to erase that, and we're going to cause ourselves way more pain and harm in the process. But when we can go, you're good, so give me this day our daily bread so I can walk with you right now, because of the goal of all of it is intimacy, right? Then we're going to walk into every plan that he has for us. And we're going to be grateful, not maybe for the circumstance, but for learning his character, leaning into his love and the intimacy of the relationship that's cultivated on the other side of that. And he's going to lead us through.
That's so good. Thanks for being here today. I want to land here. I want to give people a one-step distillation or a call to action. What can someone do who's joined with us today? What can they do today to employ not only the strategies and the principles that you taught yesterday in your message, but the things we've discussed today?
Yeah.
How can they get an on-ramp to apply this?
I would say the biggest thing that we can do is just slow down just for a little bit. I'm not talking about slow your whole life down, but carve out some time this week to slow down with the Lord a little bit and just ask him, what's underneath my motivations right now? Is it control? Is it fear? Is it, what's there, God? What needs to be healed in me? Because I believe that you have good plans for me. And I really want to walk with you in those plans. I don't want to be your soldier. I want to be your son or your daughter walking into the inheritance that you have for me. So what's in me that needs to get healed? So that I have the character to carry what's going next. I want my roots in Jesus to always be a lot greater than my branches.
That's good, man.
So how do I root down into you? What do you want to heal? Because I can't wait to move forward into what you have.
You guys, hit that subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, stay with us. We'll be back with Deep Cuts next week. Thanks for being here, Megan.
Thanks for having me, Chris.